Has a year of development and the new DLC saved EA Sports WRC? Welcome back to the Game & Muscle YouTube channel, a channel with no sarcasm and about the same excitement as Birmingham City Centre. Click that like button and subscribe if you live in Birmingham. If you already have WRC and you pay £25, you will be getting, at this point in time, 2 new locations, around about 40 kilometres of rally track, a couple of rally cars, and then the promise of additional content for existing locations in the future when those packs roll out. If you don't own WRC, you can buy the game for $44.99 and it will then get you up to date with the latest stuff for this season, plus you'll get all the old stuff that everyone else already had. To be honest, you would have been much better off buying the game right now and ignoring the previous year, because the launch of WRC, the game had a lot of bugs. Chronic stutter, rampant crashing, AI that didn't do times properly, making the single player fundamentally broken, and equipment issues. It was just constant. It was terrible. I didn't bother playing it. So, after a year of development, have things been saved and turned around by EA? Yes and no. Now I'm going to say the positive stuff first, because I noticed as soon as you say something negative, even if it's completely true, the people's brains shut down and they no longer process what's happening. So for those of you that I know are just charging up to explode like an overboiled kettle, let me just say the positives. As of now, it seems, at least on my system, the game doesn't stutter. It runs better than it did at launch. I haven't had any random crashes, and my equipment, though a pain in the arse to bind, did actually work with the game, and I could feel what the car was doing, and you know, it generally worked, and it's also approachably drivable. You can just jump on this and play it as long as you drive well within how it wants to be driven, which is in quite a specific way. You can have a really nice time driving it. I would also say, if you're not massively experienced or an old miserable git with lots of rally games and have lived through the progression of rally games through history, you're coming at it from just looking at this game, you could play this and you'll be like, oh, this is really nice, stages look really nice, cars sound quite good, I can play through a single player. It's quite a nice rally experience, especially since the addition of content through last year, and now these 2 new locations, having longer rally stages, the general features that are in there. You know, it's a reasonably rounded rally title. I would say even better if you were to just buy it now for $44.99. You're not old and jaded, you haven't played lots of rally games, you could load into this and I think you could have a reasonable rally experience with it. And if you're a rally fan, you can drive the cars that you see on the TV or on the WRC rally channels, and generally experience what rally driving is like. There you go. That was the positive stuff. That was probably what they would cut out to put on the box for the marketing material. Now, looking at this from someone that's been sim racing and playing rally games for a long time, and someone that just likes video games in general, I don't need games to be particularly realistic. I'm happy with arcade, I'm happy with simulator, I just like good games. Looking at it from a jaded old perspective, this game, though functions fine as I say now, which is it didn't at launch, so though it functions fine now, it just has this super soulless, mediocre, average, dull vibe to it. It goes through the whole game. It's like the user interface just feels really dull, boring and uninspired. It feels like kind of like a mobile phone game user interface. It's just there doesn't feel to be any soul or passion to it. The stages themselves, great that they're long, and you can see there's lots of nice side details. I do love trees and grass, different buildings. The surrounding details I think are actually really quite nice. However, the road surfaces and the actual driving surface all just feels really overly uniform in this, to the point where everything kind of just feels a bit samey to drive. Even if you go back to the previous WRC games that were published by Nacon, you will notice that those stages feel like an artist has gone over every single pixel, every little divot, every bit of edge of the track. There's so much variation that even when you're playing the same short stages over and over again, you notice all these little details, little signs, or little things that you didn't notice the previous time. That was also the case with Richard Burns Rally, like the frequency of where you'd have like random puddles or holes or little jump details or just stuff at the side of the track, small things, but small things that add up to being quite significant in a rally game. Even when you play mod tracks for Assetto Corsa or BeamNG that are rally mod tracks, they actually feel real. There's just a degree of detail there that WRC doesn't seem to have. This is probably not a good example if you've not done 3D modelling or done any games development stuff, but WRC really has this feeling that the road is like a procedural road of some kind that's then placed through an environment with some procedurally generated edges and variation to it. Now, I'm sure artists do go through it and edit it, and you know, it's not as bland as it could be. You know, it's not completely plain, but it just feels like it's some kind of repeating procedural road surface rather than an actual organic road surface. Again, I think if you're someone that's only played this game, maybe you don't really pay attention to those details. Maybe you wouldn't notice and you just enjoy driving it. But if you're someone that's experienced a lot of rally games, maybe driven around a lot of country roads or walked around lots of country roads or, you know, done mountain biking, off-roading and stuff, you know, there's just so many details and variations and unique stuff for every single metre of road. And I do think that's a significant thing when it comes to a rally game, even though it might seem like a stupid thing. Another description is, when I play this, it feels like I'm at a bowling alley with the bumpers up at the sides. The tracks feel like a bowling alley with bumpers. Even the way the car bounces off the side of it, the way the edges of the track you accidentally knock sometimes, it's just too uniform. Now, that might not bother you, but it really bothers me when it comes to a rally game. Now, also, when it comes to the handling, again, it's just really bland, really mediocre and really average. If you stay within the profile of handling that the game wants you to have, which is effectively sort of driving everything as if it was a front-wheel drive car, really, and kind of rolling into the corners and then letting the game do what it does and then you work with that, then it's quite drivable and you can get into quite a rhythm with it. And it's also very approachable and also quite satisfying because you can kind of zone out and get into a flow, which is quite nice and quite a rewarding experience. But if you're someone that really likes to actually push the cars and really balance them on the throttle and have really granular fine control over the oversteer, the understeer, maybe do something slightly wrong and then manipulate it and Scandinavian flick into corners in various ways and sort of just play with the physics more, you will find with this it's kind of restrictive. It punishes you for trying to actually drive the cars. And weirdly, if you're actually trying to drive quick in this, it's a lot harder to drive than some of the older rally games out there. Like even Richard Burns Rally, which is difficult in many ways, and I'm not saying Richard Burns Rally is perfect. This in some ways is actually even harder than Richard Burns Rally when you're truly actually trying to dance around with the vehicles. What I really noticed for the handling with this is that the cars have a tendency to have this zone where they move around and slide around a bit, but they're totally happy, totally comfortable, it's mega predictable and super grippy. But as soon as the back steps out, you really go over the limit on the rears, the physics just turn off, almost a bit like iRacing in a weird way. And same thing also happens a bit with the understeer in this game. If you go out of its predefined range, it's like, oh, now we're in lunatic physics land. And unfortunately, when you play those rear-wheel drive cars, you then notice it more in all the cars in the game, though the older all-wheel drive, like the Subaru, it's a lot less prone. All-wheel drive helps mask like the rear car snapping out, the front of the car snapping out, because the cars are obviously more balanced and the diffs and everything tend to balance everything out. But fundamentally, the behaviour is there with everything in the game, and I think it's just how it drives. So if you don't notice that, or you drive within its limit, and you're also not super passionate about balancing the car on the throttle and on the brake and rotating it, which in my opinion would be the actual point of rally driving, which is the joy of the rotation and car precision on an unknown piece of track. If you don't care too much about that, then you probably wouldn't notice. I guess if you're playing with a gamepad as well, you're probably not driving to that degree of precision in many ways, and you're probably having to drive under the limit and maybe with a bit more just general understeer, just because of how you have to drive with a gamepad, so maybe you wouldn't notice it so much. But yeah, if you're coming at this from a more experienced sim racer, or someone that just really likes manipulating vehicles and that the core driving component, if you're coming at it from that perspective, then the handling, I think, just can grate on you a little bit. But look, I'll be positive here. I think, for me personally, I think if I focused on the gameplay and a focus on the levels, and I might actually start playing through it again now that it doesn't crash all the time, I think you could probably ignore those aspects of the physics and play through it and still have quite an enjoyable time. If you're willing to sign up to the EA stuff, you could then do like the daily events, and you can also host stuff in the game to race with your friends, and that all seems to work reasonably seamless and is quite easy to jump into. So if you're just going to go, right, it's another rally game, it does have really nice long stages, it's got its own quirks, and I'm willing to overlook all that stuff, then I would say now you can get it and you can have an okay time with it. Just delete from your brain your knowledge of Dirt Rally 1, Dirt Rally 2, Richard Burns Rally. Just delete all your knowledge of the previous games. I don't know about you guys. Right, I know I probably sound like a miserable git. I am a miserable git. I personally find it quite difficult to accept when things regress when they don't have to. I'm totally open for when developers make a game and it's a bit wrong or it's a bit different and they're tweaking it and they're working on it. What hurts my brain is when you have something like Codemasters, now EA doing this, where they had a previous game that was substantially better and the new game is a full price game, and in many ways, the core ways, the most important interaction ways, the actual core gameplay ways, it's substantially worse. The same thing happened with ACC versus AC. There's aspects to the new game that's great. However, the core underlying driving, the actual point of why you're playing a video game in a simulator, the force feedback, the mechanics of the vehicles, the nuance of the handling, it's really weird when a developer goes backwards, and a little bit frustrating. I find that frustrating. Maybe that's unreasonable, but that's a personal frustration. Interestingly, I have noticed somewhat of a pattern here. This is using Unreal 4 engine. ACC uses Unreal 4 engine. Kartcraft uses Unreal 4 engine. What I'm getting to is I've noticed that whenever a somewhat realistic racing simulator or driving game uses Unreal, and you have a previous game or other games that don't use Unreal, every Unreal version of the game not only looks blurry due to DLSS temporal AA, which is a crime. I mean, the blurriness drives me crazy. Even on a 4K monitor with upscale and everything else, there's still like weird blurry shimmeringness going on. We'll put that to one side. Put the blurriness to one side. The Unreal driving games always feel like there's something in the way of your driving, the mechanics, and there's just a sluggishness to them. Every single one of them. So I'm just thinking here that maybe there is some connection with Unreal Engine and it just being too bloated, or there's something going on that interferes with that precise, hyper-precise, direct connectedness that you notice if you're somewhat of an experienced sim racer. Might not notice it if you're not that experienced. Probably wouldn't notice it if you're playing with a gamepad. But there you go. It's just food for thought. So, yeah, I don't want this video... sorry for talking too long, guys. If you got this far in the video, say Gamer Muscle should leave sim racing and become a fisherman. Then I'll know that you've wasted too much of your time, and I'll just feel bad for you, to be honest. But to get to the end of this video, I would say that if you were buying this now for $44.99, I would say now it's an okay game. I just think personally it's just super mediocre. It has its place. I really hope though that someone actually, I hope that we either Codemasters keep developing this and improve it. I don't know if they can fix the unrealness of this, the delay and stuff, the physics. I mean, if it's been a year, I don't know what they could do. But I hope someone comes out with a true mega rally game. But you could play this and you could have an okay time with it. Is that on the box? Gamer Muscle. You could play this and you could have an okay time with it. 5 out of 10. The state of gaming, guys. Thank you everyone for watching this though. I really appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to be independent and to speak my mind. Sadly, a lot of people feel pressured not to be as directly honest, I think, in sim racing and in media, because it really is not financially a good idea to speak the truth. So thank you to all of you that support us. I really do appreciate it. Until the next one though, happy rally driving, happy tea drinking, take care, and goodbye.